But there is a show that I really want to just get to this darn finale, please. And that is The Flash. And Michael, you know that this episode and I don't entirely agree. However, I do want to caveat by saying it's not because it's not a good episode. It is. It's because the season 8 story, they needed to pick. Either we're going to focus on Caitlyn this season or we're going to focus on Iris. You can't do two major storylines at one time. And that is what they're trying to do. And it's not working at all.
Yeah, I feel like I always say that I feel like a conversation with you guys wakes me up. And after what Reed pointed out last week, it's really interesting to hear even a description of the episode, because like there's us talking about the season, the main storylines, and the two main characters involved in it. And the main character from the show is not a lead in any of those storylines. That's my biggest issue with the season. Both stories, maybe I'm lying. One of the stories, they're doing very, very well. And that is the Caitlyn Deathstorm story. You finally feel like there's stakes in that story. Caitlyn's at the heart of the storyline that isn't silly. And we're finally going to see Frost step up after she got knocked on her backside again this week, because I treat that character with some respect, please. But we're finally going to see Frost step up. That's exciting for me. And I do have complaints, but no major concerns about that storyline. They're doing it fine. The time sickness one is really worrying thin. They finally made some progress, so I will give them that. But this storyline is not that interesting simply because it's not being treated in an interesting way. Iris is falling in and out of existence, and meanwhile Barry's sitting getting pep talks from Joe about Caitlyn. I'm like, dude, your daughter and your wife, both you guys, she's literally dying, and you guys are just like having happy-go-lucky. You can beat this monster, Barry. I have faith in you. Like, it doesn't add up for me. So again, the need to separate those two stories is killing the show, because both storylines have momentum. The time sickness one could have a bit more, let's be honest. But you pointed out really, really well, and that's that these two storylines could both work as main storylines, and being stuck in the same episode together day in, day out is killing the momentum of both of them. The Deathstorm story could have had a little bit more stakes, and you could have seen Kramer and the police trying to stop the people from dying. That scene where they told the dead body or the people to stay inside, otherwise they become roasted dead bodies. That was great. That really heightened that this grief monster will continue feeding on grief, so just be careful. The scene of Deathstorm literally lifting that poor grieving man up into the sky and dropping his flaming dead body on the ground, that added stakes that we haven't seen in The Flash. I just don't think the stakes of the dead people are not taken into account in the show. So even when he burns like 4 people, it's still, let's save Caitlyn. And of course, it's important to save Caitlyn, but it's like the deaths don't impact on these heroes anymore. And all deaths should carry weight. Speaking of which, we're apparently going to lose a major character next week in a huge death. I have no idea what to expect from that. I have no idea who we're going to lose. Worried about what that means for the show, because I don't think any of those 4 main characters should go. 5 main characters, and really not that interested in the other characters. But since Eric Wallace introduced those characters, since Eric Wallace built those characters up, I don't think we're going to lose one of the newer characters, which is a shame for me, because the show could afford to lose 1 or 2 new characters. It can't afford to lose its older one. Sorry. It can't afford to lose its older ones. I'm sorry. But yeah, that's my issues with The Flash in general. All in all, I give the episode maybe a 7.5 or an 8. What they did was great. How they did it could have used some work. But again, of all the offenders we've seen since the show returned, this wasn't one of them. So it was a solid episode for me with some great moments. It just could have been smoothed out a little bit more.
It was tense. And I liked that there was intensity to it, because I felt like whether I was in the Caitlyn storyline or whether I was in the Iris storyline, I was very tight while watching. Obviously, I'm more tight when it comes to Iris. That's my girl. But I don't know. This juggling thing that they're doing is really making me question the season as a whole. Because it's like, but it's because you're trying to do too many things at one time. And I just wish the Iris's time sickness storyline was given the weight that it needs to be given. I love her relationship with Sue. That friendship is really great. It is odd that a woman that we had not seen her interact with since a previous season, who wasn't even the main one interacting with her, is the major player in her time sickness storyline. Like, that whole think of your family, use them as an anchor thing, that whole scene was wonderfully acted.
Incredible.
It's just odd that Iris is in the same city on the same plane of existence. And both Barry and Joe are at Star Labs concerned about Caitlyn. Not that we can't be concerned about Caitlyn, but Barry is very aware that his wife is blinking in and out of existence. So much so that when he got the text from Sue that Iris was back, didn't even finish his conversation with Cecile, immediately went to go see his wife, touched her, even though it could mean that he could evaporate. He did not care because he loves her and he wants to take care of her. Iris got to hesitate when he asked her did she want him to stay, but he still had to go into the other storyline. I was like, this is not how Barry Allen would react to Iris West potentially dying or disappearing from his world. It's just very, very strange. But as in terms of who's leaving, I think it's Frost. I think they're going to cheat because they're going to keep Danielle. And so if you kill Frost off, you still get Caitlyn. So it's a major character death, but it's a major character death that they can live with. Like, I think we'd have to really be sitting in the rest of season 8 mourning Caitlyn Snow. Not that they won't mourn Frost, but it won't be the same type of mourning.
See, that's really interesting because I thought Frost was the main character that might die as well, especially now they've set her up. We're going to get supercharged Frost versus supercharged Deathstorm. And like this is going to be, I think this next episode is going to be the finale of this storyline. And I'm really excited to see that, especially if they're going to start using Frost properly. She's been like their ace in the hole that they've just yeeted her away every single time she's shown up. Like, she deserved more than that. So yeah, it does look like that. But I remember when I posted the tweet, everyone's quote tweeting it suggesting that it'll actually be Caitlyn because Frost has gotten the shot on the posters when probably should have been Caitlyn. Danielle recently posted about wrapping the season and posted a picture of the finale script, but then posted a picture of herself in the makeup chair as Frost. So a lot of people are like, does that mean Frost's in the finale? We know Danielle's in the finale, but does that mean Frost's in the finale? I do get it. It's easy now. It's absolutely easy to see why Danielle is one of Danielle's characters is the obvious one to go, because it means they can still keep Danielle on the show, but get rid of whatever character. But at the same time, it would be incredibly disappointing for me because I don't think the show can really afford to lose any character right now. And what was the point in separating Caitlyn and Killer Frost all those years ago if they're going to say, I can't deal with the stress, get rid of one of them? You're like, you could have just kept them together to begin with. There was no point in that story. I would hate it if we lost either one of them. I can see why logistically it would make sense, but this also reminds me of the Arrow Who's in the Grave storyline of concocting a story and then having to write around it instead. I don't want to see more. Don't get me wrong, some of the Caitlyn and some of the Killer Frost stuff has not been good, but I don't want to see more Allegra, Chester, Cecile screen time when it could be spent on one of the original characters instead. Some of what they've done with Chester, Cecile, and Allegra has been fantastic, but none of it's been given the stakes it needs to be. So I'm not as invested in those characters. I will never be as invested in those characters. I don't want them to die. Let them stay on the show, but I don't want to lose one of the OG characters either. So I'm very, very much in two minds about this. I hope it's not Caitlyn or Frost, and I obviously hope it's not Barry or Iris or Joe. But like the way the show's using its characters and abusing its characters at the moment, who knows what way it could go.
No, but no one knows. And I think I'm just going to say it'd be a writing mistake to have it be Caitlyn, because her storyline is already overshadowing Iris. How are they as writers going to kill Caitlyn and that still want the show to pivot to what's going on with Iris? Like, we can't have Team Flash grieving and at the same time Iris is disintegrating into the still force. It just doesn't really make sense to me. And then, of course, you have Iris fans worried because of Candace Patton's recent, I think it was an Instagram post where she said, that's a wrap on Iris West Allen, wiping her face. And it looked like she'd been crying.
I thought that too.
And then the Iris trailer door closes. And you're like, ma'am, are you telling us you're not in season 9? Because if that's the case, I'm going to say this right now, I'm not watching The Flash. They've done so much with Iris in terms of it sort of being a threat every season that she may or may not get the things that she deserves on the show. If she's not in season 9, it's a wrap for me too. If it's a wrap for Iris West Allen, it's a wrap for Sabrina Reed. It is what it is.
I have to say, is it wrong that the first thing I thought of was like, no, Sabrina, I need someone to rant to on a weekly basis, so please keep watching it.
No,
But
that's
I,
not wrong at all. But I would be anger, Michael, just straight up anger every episode.
well, let's be honest, that's what we're doing now anyway. But I don't know. I think it would be a mistake to lose her as well, but they haven't been doing the most with her or like the least or like anything with her at all this season. So I can see why, as an actor, maybe you'd want to move on to a more challenging role, which is a shame because the concept of Iris West Allen in the beginning was an incredibly challenging character. And yet now it just feels like the writers are honing it in. Let's stick Iris in this episode. Let's stick Iris in that episode, but let's have nobody care about her. And like, the character kind of deserves better than that. So if they're going to do the whole let's save Iris one more time, but even the writing team doesn't care about it, what's the point in keeping her around? She deserves much better than that. And I hope she's in the season, but I can see why, as an actor, you might think time to move on now.
I could see it too, but selfishly, I want my Iris West. And I
Yeah.
think it just says a lot about the Flash that like your leading lady doesn't even make it to your potential final season. Like, what are we doing? But then again, like you said, they're not really treating her storylines like she's the leading lady. Like her Barry's not in them. He's in there for like 5 minutes and then he's got to go over to Star Labs. I think everyone's getting tired.
Mm-hmm.
I guess to put like to wrap this up in a bow, season 9 needs to be it. I know we had a poll and like people were divided, but for me, season 9 needs to be it with the Flash if this is what we're going to be doing.
I don't watch the show and I agree with you.
Well,
I just want you guys to have peace. Go out on a high note.
it still can. And that's
Yeah.
a good way of tying it up, because I said a few weeks ago that the new kind of like procedural format the Flash has taken on, it could go on for years if it wanted to, but this isn't about like a precinct solving crimes. This story has always been about the characters at the heart of it, and the longer it goes on, the less those characters will be around. So wrap up while you still have at least one or two of them left at this point. Go out on the highest of highs you can now. Could have probably gone out on a higher high 4 years ago, but do what you can at the moment, because in 5 years from now you'll not have that option. So go out on a high, please.